Hello, this is another episode of DD on the Spot. I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. I'm here joined by the band All That We See. They are a metalcore band from St. Paul, Minnesota. Gentlemen, great to have you guys on the show.
Thanks for having us, man.
Yeah, so why don't you give us a little bit of a story about how you guys formed up, how you guys started musically, and what your inspirations are, influences.
Sure. So Eddie, our guitarist, his brother CJ is our drummer, so they were the original two. They've had a couple other bands before this one, and they've been kind of making music together their whole lives. I actually, in high school, I was dating a girl who was friends with CJ, and I was a drummer myself, more so than a vocalist at the time. And so we kind of connected on that level, and we all hung out one time. And then I think like a year later or so, I had broken up with that girl, and he'd made a Facebook status like, oh, we need someone to join our band and do vocals. And at the time, I was kind of just starting to get into like trying to be a vocalist and trying to do more like screaming and heavier stuff. So I just like on the spot when I read that, I went up into my room and recorded an audition video, and they took me. And so ever since then, we've kind of just been building and progressing from there. I would say influence wise, I think as a band, we're pretty influenced by, I think it's kind of all over the place. Like we draw inspiration from a lot of different groups, but like I think in terms of just like what we're kind of similar to in terms of our overall sound is kind of like if you've heard of like Wage War or Architects or something, like just your kind of average metalcore band.
Yeah, I've heard of Architects. Yeah, they're really, really good. So when was the first time that each of you either like knew that you guys were gonna be passionate about music? Like when was that kind of like spark when you were like, oh wow, I want to play music for my life, for the rest of my life?
Oh man, probably for me it'd be like 10, 12 or some shit, and I was swearing. Okay.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, or like Linkin Park. Obviously, that's like a huge inspiration for a lot of people. But like those new metal roots, and then I got a guitar when I was 13. So then ever since then, I was like, this is what I'm gonna do.
Is there a specific song that you remember like listening to, and then that song you were like, oh my god, this sounds so great, like I want to do that?
Numb. Definitely. Well, for you, Numb. Mine was Somewhere I Belong on Meteora, Linkin Park.
Oh, nice. Yep.
That music video specifically because they had like the Gundams in there too. Like, I just remember it super vividly. That was like, oh my god, it's like a rock band that's got anime and it's super tight.
For me, it was definitely just for, I don't play, but like just for my interest in music, it was definitely when I listened to Metallica's Master of Puppets. Oh, that just blew me away when that whole thing started, and it just really picked up, and I was like, who the hell are these guys? And then so then that really got me into that whole scene. But when was your guys' first gig? Do you guys remember, like, not even in this band, like overall, do you guys remember like what happened, where you were?
My first show in a band that wasn't like a talent show at my high school was with them. I want to say it was like around I was like 16. So I was like a junior in high school. Yeah, we played a friend of ours. It was his birthday, and he just decided for his birthday party he wanted to book a show and get like all of his friends' bands on it. So it was at the garage, and we played. There's this band called Distant Signals, and I think it was like this guy's birthday party / their CD release / our first show, and it was kind of weird because we were playing. It was like this dude invited a bunch of girls, and like half the other artists were like. There was a DJ, and there was like Hippocampus played, I think, that show, and like it was very all over the place. So we played
a show with them. I know that was super weird.
We played that show, and everyone sat down because we were just we did not really fit in too well. So I remember that vividly because I learned like all the things to not say on stage at that show. Like I was just trying to get people. I was like, "Get off your ass! Come on, like come party with us!" Blah blah blah. And there was just like crickets. So that was like. It was good and bad. Like it was embarrassing at the time, but I'm so glad that I like crashed and burned at our first show. So everything after that, I like how successful kind of stuff ends up being usually. So it was definitely a learning experience.
It was a baptism by fire, basically.
Oh, totally. Yeah, 100%. It was like my parents were there, and I was just like.
Were they ones sitting down too?
Oh yeah, they were in the back sitting down. Like they filmed a lot of it on their phone, and even then I remember they showed me some video, and I was like, oh man, like. Got some work to do.
So
since then, it's been a while since then, so I'm glad.
I hope it's been a lot better. Yeah, well, obviously, looking at your guys' YouTube videos, it has gotten a lot better. But the screaming that like comes in your voice, because I always wondered like, what was the inspiration behind just like screaming for all your vocals and stuff? Is that just like sort of like represent the emotion in the song, or is that just the type of singing that you like to do?
Well, I can't sing at all. I'm a horrible singer. I'd like to be able to sing, but no, I think, yeah, I mean, I definitely like to have kind of an exasperated sound, for sure. Mm-hmm. Like, I think if I were to, like, I know of all the metal styles of vocals and stuff, like, what I think my voice pulls off the best is sort of the, like, exasperated, almost desperate sound of just, like, grasping for air kind of thing over, like, you know, I don't do too much where I try to sound, like, mean or, like, angry so much as much as I try to go for more just, like, panicked.
Yeah. So, when you guys you write the music, do you kind of like have a sense even for the rest of the band, even though someone else kind of like does like the music like behind it? Do you kind of have a sense in your head like what the music should sound like, and then like when he comes up with the music, you're like, oh, that's kind of like what I thought in my head, or do you just like leave that entirely to them?
Well, we talk about it a lot. Like usually when a song comes out, we all have pretty similar interests musically in terms of what we listen to. So usually when something comes out that we feel has like a style or a sound that we could implement into our own, we'll usually just put it in like the group chat and be like, you know, 2 minutes and 27 seconds, this breakdown, I'd love to do something like this in a song. And then CJ, when he's writing the music, will try to like keep that in mind and kind of cater to like the things that we all want to accomplish. But yeah, again, usually he kind of gets the final say, or Eddie gets the final say on like what we really go with. But yeah, like we definitely have a discussion with the whole band. Our bassist Mike as well, it kind of gives input about like the style we're going for. But it's cool because we have kind of, while we do listen to a lot of the similar music, we do have kind of a eclectic mix as well. Like Eddie listens to a lot of like, on top of metal, he'll listen to a lot of like instrumental, like kind of more chill music, where Mike, our bassist, is a huge Fred Durst and Limp Bizkit fan. CJ will listen to like extremely heavy stuff, and I'm kind of more of like a hardcore beatdown kind of fan. So like I think our sound is kind of like a weird like pie chart of like little percentages of each of our influences kind of mixed.
Awesome. So it also, Evan, I want to talk to you a little bit about, you said you were a photographer too. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Oh, sure. So yeah, I'm a photographer, videographer, primarily dealing with metal bands as well. I work with a lot of our friends' bands. So yeah, I actually recently just got back from tour. I was out with By the Thousands and The Faceless, did a couple dates with them. And I think later on this summer I'm going out with Reaping Asmodea and this band called Alter Beast. And I'm going to do a couple, like it's like a coast-to-coast tour, but I think I'm just hopping down south. But yeah, I do like live photos, music videos, stuff like that.
Where did you go on your last tour that you just came back from?
The last tour was just a few dates. We did Grand Junction, Colorado. Then we spent a day in Denver. We had a day off, and then we went up to St. Louis, and then there was a show in Chicago. And then I spent a few days in Milwaukee with a couple friends and came back home.
So you guys are the first, because this is the third overall podcast, but the first two had bands that were just about to start touring but hadn't been touring. We can talk a lot about the tour life, because that is something that I think the listeners would be glad to hear about. What would you say is the biggest misconception about being on tour as a band, or even as someone associated with a band?
Oh, okay. We were actually just talking about this. So the biggest misconception about touring at a level of band that isn't like insanely big is that it's almost a waste of time. It's not nearly as cool or luxurious as the appeal of it sounds.
Yeah.
Like I still, before our first tour, my concept of touring was like the 70s, where it's just like a party and it's great this whole time, but it's a lot of driving, a lot of drinking and eating from gas stations, and a lot of it depends. There's definitely a lot of amazing things about it, but they're not the things that you would expect. Like it's not like huge turnouts, tons of money, girls, and weed. It's much more. There's a lot of personal things that it's like spending 5 days in a van with my best friends is more what I took away from it than
cracking keystones in the parking lot.
Yeah. So it was more just like almost like a vacation. But I mean, obviously we were working the whole time, but being with the group of guys we were with, it felt like a vacation.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah, because I always just got to recommend to everyone who's listening here who doesn't really get what the tour's like. There was a documentary on the band Anvil, who were like a late 80s band who had like one good like hit single and they completely vanished, and it's a story just about them like trying to like regain their like diminished popularity in Europe and just all the struggles that they have with touring. I would definitely suggest that everyone goes and watches that, because it just shows that why, yes, if you're like an Ozzy Osbourne, or if you're like the Eagles, or if you're like any of those big names, U2, obviously your tour is going to be a lot of fun just because you're staying in 5-star hotels all the time, you're eating just the best food, and you're just having a lot of experiences in these cities. But if you're just a up-and-coming band, I mean, it is a lot more of just hard work, and the fun really doesn't really come that much, besides like what you're saying, just like hanging out with your friends, which I really think that like people need to know, because I don't feel that like people when they first go on tour, they do think it'll just be like a huge party, and then when you know push comes to shove, they're like, oh shit, this is like nothing that I thought of. But just to like sort of persevere through that, because you got to get through those type of times until you get the really big fan base, and then you can get the success. And what's your favorite place that you guys had played at?
Let's see, my favorite was probably Omaha, Nebraska. We played this big fest out in Omaha with like, I think there was like 15 bands on it, but they were all hardcore bands, and we've got a little bit more of like a progressive sound. So that show was cool because we got to be like the sore thumb. We got to sound like totally different than every other band, and it was just a good time. Like we got to see a lot of bands play that we had wanted to see play as well. So it was almost like it was cool for me as both like a fan and a musician to be at that show. Otherwise, I think, yeah, just hometown. We played the Reflections farewell show September of 2016, and that was, I think, by far our one of our coolest hometown shows, just because that, I don't know, that was just a good show.
So when you guys are playing live, what is like, how do you describe like the high that I hear a lot of performers talking about, like when they're playing in front of people and they feed off their energy and they just get that satisfaction of knowing that they're like bringing joy to people? Could you describe a little bit like what that feels like?
Yeah, what's that like for you?
I mean, I guess it's just like a really nice payoff. It's like weeks before I'm practicing, you know, in my room doing like the dance moves and everything else, you know, because you got to perform. Yeah. It's like you get 20 minutes to show everybody like what you can do, basically, and it's pretty surreal. Yeah. I mean, it's always going to be like the best sort of high that you can get.
Definitely.
You know.
Yeah.
Which is why I keep doing it. You know.
For me, it's kind of like a I don't want to say like a power thing, but it's almost like a respect thing. Like you know, I'm not the most like aggressive person in my day-to-day life, so I don't usually go out of my way to try to be like any type of alpha. But on stage, I can be this like angry looking mean guy, and I can totally, you know, kind of create my own image. And like, you know, if I'm doing something dorky walking down the street, everyone can look and be like, hey, that guy's dorky. But if I'm on stage with my band, it tends to be perceived as more like, oh, damn, I respect that he's going hard, rather than like, why is that guy being all weird, you know?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
It's kind of cool, especially with like how emotional and like almost like depressive and angry our music can get sometimes. It's kind of nice to be able to let that out. Like one of my favorite vocalists, Lewis Hamill, he was in By the Thousands, and now he's in a rap metal group called Ultra Rare. The best vocal performance I've ever seen was he just did like a 30-second guest spot with a band, and he literally got the entire crowd from standing still to like going absolutely crazy. And I went outside with him after that and just asked him like, how do you do that? And all he said back was, you got to free the beast. So that's been kind of like my motto. Like every time we're about to go on stage, like in my head, I try to take like 30 seconds right before I hit the stage where I'm just like totally alone. And I just think about all of the things that I want to like let out, and then just go let it out.
I was going to say, you guys, obviously, your guys' music isn't the happiest type of lyrically wise, or the way that the music is. Do you ever feel that, like, maybe, or, like, does playing it repeatedly and saying those lyrics repeatedly, does that sometimes put you in, like, a down mood, or is it just kind of like the release of those emotions that sort of, like, brings you in a happy mood? Or, like, because I would figure that if, like, I would continue to sing lyrics like that, like, might not be, like, the happiest lyrics, like, maybe eventually it might, like, bring me down, but do you guys have ways to maybe, like, combat that, or is it just a way of, like, releasing emotions?
For me, it's almost like a warning. Like, a lot of these lyrics, like, I can look back at and remember the place that I was in when I wrote them. And so I think saying them and repeating them over and over, it's almost like a reminder to myself, like, I don't want to fall back to that. So I think screaming it, it's almost empowering to, like, I get to relive it for that 20 minutes on stage, but I know after that time is done that I don't have to, like, carry that with me anymore.
Yeah, I was going to say, because when I think about stuff like that, I always comes to mind, like, Nirvana, and if you hear some of those lyrics with, like, Kurt Cobain, especially after, like, what he did, you're kind of wondering, like, oh man, like there were like signs there and everything. Not saying that like any of you guys, but I'm just saying like that type of stuff in general. It does kind of make you wonder like how that stuff like might like affect like people.
Oh yeah, just being in the environment of such like depressive music, I can totally see how that would get kind of you down. Yeah. And I think for me that just comes like that. I can combat that pretty well with just like how much I enjoy the music that Eddie and CJ make too. Just because like I feel incredibly blessed to be able to scream my sad words over their like amazing music. So to me, it's like I focus almost more on the music than anything just because I'm so impressed still. Like, I'm almost as big of a fan as I am a member of what they do. So
how special does it make it, too, also, when you guys are performing songs that you guys have wrote? And, I mean, people in the past to me have described it kind of as, like, their baby, like their music and everything. How does that feel, or how much extra does that high make you feel knowing that, like, you guys created this, you guys cultivated this and practiced it for hours and hours, and then you guys are finally, like, unleashing it to the audience? How extra does that make it feel?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I
think it depends a little bit. Depends on the song for sure. Like, there's definitely like certain parts of certain songs that we all kind of agree like we really like. So like that is for sure. Like those are the best feeling parts is when we get to do like we all know like, oh, this part's coming up and we usually have like a plan to do something on stage to make that part like emphasized or whatever. So I think definitely, yeah, like knowing that we created it and we do it is great. It depends because it can also be the biggest, middle finger to us when if we play a show that's not so great. Yeah. To be like, this is ours and we totally just like botched the presentation of it, which I mean, I don't think we've had a show like that where we've been just like, holy shit, in a long, long time. So luckily we do have at least like a basis now to where we can get it off without any like, incidents or anything. But yeah, definitely having written the music, like it can either be the greatest thing or the worst thing depending on how the show goes.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So you guys have all obviously made some records. Could you maybe go through with us like the recording process, like what it entails, like who you get into contact with, what it's like recording your own music, what it's like mixing it and editing it, and just how like the finished product comes into place?
There's there's a few different ways that you could do it. We recorded a lot of like the guitars and bass at a studio. Like at the time, although like in the future, like we could always just, do it ourselves. Like we have all the equipment to be able to do it, but like sometimes you work with people and sometimes it's cool. I kind of prefer doing stuff on our own because we can take more time, less money. Yeah. But then we ultimately get the result that we want. Although I will say for like getting anything like mixed and mastered, I think it's best for probably every band to like send it off to somebody else to like do the mixing and mastering. At least somebody else's ears that, haven't like ever heard your music. Yeah. That could like sort of add their vision to it, because I think that's something that's really, underlooked. Everybody wants to do it themselves because it's their baby, but
yeah. It's kind of, I think it says a lot about how much you really care about your own final product if you're willing to like hand your baby over. It's almost like giving it up it's like letting your kid go stay with grandma for the week or something, and you're like, oh, well, I hope they don't fall and break their neck, but at the same time,
you trust them.
Exactly, yeah. So like what we did for our most recent record is we sent our music off to Nick Delestrade from, he's in a band called Novelists, and he's from France, I believe. And wow. So we sent all of our recordings over to him, and emailed back and forth. He had some broken English, but we figured it out. And yeah, he did a great job. Like we were very, very impressed. And I think that's like the biggest testament to why it's so important to do that, because for so long I feel like we had such a solid idea of how we wanted it to sound. And then when we started getting mixes back from him, who had never heard us before, had no idea who we were, we sent him some money in the songs, and what he did with them was something that I probably never would have imagined our sound ending up like. And I was so happy with it. So I'd say more often than not, if you take the route of sending it off to like a professional or someone you look up to, you're gonna end up more happy than anything.
Has there ever, not to name names or anything, but has there ever been a company or a person that you sent your music off to and you didn't like the way that they edited it?
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
we don't like talking about it too much.
Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, I just wanted to just to get a yes or no
the
thing.
whole process with recording this, May Your Find Your Worth, was a little rocky. It took a few months to get it initially recorded, but I mean, the mixing and mastering process was like
that was
the best part, because it didn't take. He was really good about delivering like really quickly, but like really good quality.
Yeah.
And then like everything that we had in terms of notes and everything, he made it happen.
Like almost like that. Like we would say like, oh, the vocals should be louder right here, and 10 minutes later we'd get an updated version.
So it just, I guess it just goes to show you that it's like, it was just kind of why we emphasize like, if you can do it yourself, it's best to, but you really got to understand like how to, record at that like professional level.
Yeah.
So it takes it's just a practice.
Yeah.
If you're fortunate enough to have, the ability to do it yourself, it's nice. But
yeah, and then a lot of trial and error too with finding producers. So like what I would recommend for a band looking for a producer is like more often than not, most successful bands, there is a member of that band with either a production degree or who does some sort of production. So find a band you really like, and odds are like most of their music was tracked by that member. So like there's a band called Loathe that we really love, and their guitarist Eric is a producer as well. So like we've thought about sending him some stuff, or like Novelists, our drummer CJ is a huge fan of, and they're all self-produced. So we figured that Nick from Novelists would be a great pick, just we like what he did with their music. So that's for sure the best thing about it is like, since most of these big bands have like an in-house producer kind of thing going on, you can listen to that band and it's almost like a showcase of what they can do. So that kind of eliminates the whole trial and error thing, where I feel like when you do go with like a local thing, like if we were to go downtown Minneapolis and just find someone who says they're a music producer, like it's a lot harder than to guarantee what you're going to get.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So you guys have made music videos. You can obviously check them out on their YouTube channel, All That We See. What was the music video process like? I mean, I always kind of wondered when you see those music videos and like those certain moments where like the singer just sings a little bit of lyrics. Do you guys, when you like shoot those certain shots, do you play the whole song the entire way through, or do you just kind of figure out, oh, this is the point where we're going to sing like this lyric, and then you just record it, or what's that like?
Oh man, so the Perfect Mirror video was that music video we did. It was like our big budget, like we spent as much money as we could on it and had it be as full of a production as possible. So that whole shoot was, I think, about 8 to 10 hours of shooting.
Wow.
And we would play the song all the way through with the camera guy and the guy running the grip moving the camera. They would pick a member to focus on each time through. So I think we did the song like 5 or 6 times through, where they only filmed me, but everyone else had to be in the background, like throwing down and stuff. And then
pretty sweaty.
Yeah. So then vice versa. Then we had a couple shots where they just did Eddie and just CJ and just our bassist Mike. And then we had a couple parts where we did like the flowers falling and whatnot, where we had to do that shot like 20 or 30 times of just like dropping all these flowers on us, sweeping them all up and trying it again. So yeah, that was definitely a huge process, and it was very, very tiring. The thing I learned from that is that like, yeah, I went as hard as I could 5 times in a row for my parts and was burnt out by like noon.
Yeah.
So I think in the future I'll definitely not try as hard. But
well, our other music video is a lot different.
Yeah.
Because we did mostly just like single shots.
Yep.
And we did that in our like studio practice space that we used to have.
Yeah.
But
seed video we did ourselves. And that video was a lot easier just because, yeah, like rather than, we did no group shots for that video. We did all singles and then tried to just edit it all together as fast as possible. So it looked just chaotic and quick, but we didn't want there to be like, we didn't really want there to be like a master shot of all of us to keep cutting back to. We just wanted it to stay continuously cutting back and forth and more chaotic. So definitely like catered to the song with that one for sure. But yeah, the process of like the bigger budget video is definitely a lot more taxing on us than the one we did ourselves.
And for Perfect Mirror, who was the idea with the flowers? Was that your guys' idea, or was that someone that you hired, or who came up with that?
Was that us?
I think that was our idea.
CJ, was that your idea? The flowers falling in Perfect Mirror? I think that was, yeah. That was probably CJ's
Somebody
idea.
came up with it.
Yeah, I don't think it was him because I remember we had the idea of we wanted these kind of like Japanese rose petal looking things like the pink, white, and red. We wanted to have that kind of look, so we bought those fake flowers. So I'm assuming that was our idea.
Sure, you guys. Yeah, we probably all bounced it off of.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't really remember for sure. We had a couple meetings with the director leading up to it, but I don't really remember how detailed we got with the specifics.
And who comes up with like the directions for like Perfect Mirror? Like who came up with the directions? So you said you had a few meetings with the director. Did he come up with a lot of the what the music video was going to look like, or did you guys give him like sort of like an idea of what you wanted to see?
Yeah, we kind of met in the middle. There was definitely like we sent him the song and he was like, when I hear this, I see this, and then we were kind of like, yeah, and we were thinking this too, or like maybe not so much that and more this, and you know, he was super easy to work with. He was really great. His name is Jake Woodbridge, by the way. He is a very, very talented director, and I think he's doing more like commercial work than anything. Like I think like Best Buy and Target commercials and stuff like that is what he's been more so involved with. But
he did Polyphia's new music.
Yeah, I did Polyphia's new music video. He's done a couple videos for them. Yeah. But yeah, he's really easy to work with. Really very, very smart. He kind of like he took a lot of the stuff that we were trying to say, and he was able to say it. If that makes sense.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So so you guys just recorded it for one day. How long did it take to like whittle it down and before it was ready to be released? Just a few days of editing, or how'd that work?
No, the editing process was a lot longer. There was a couple issues that we ran into with that too, where like we had added those special effects, the like little black marks all over the video and stuff. That kind of took the longest, I think, because we were able to get the lady who did the special effects, all that stuff. I don't remember exactly why, but she was willing to do it for free.
Oh, wow.
But that came with her not, prioritizing it over her paid work. So I think but it was, we weren't really in any rush because we were waiting for the song to get finished as well at the time. So it was kind of perfect. Like the song and the video kind of like came together all at once.
Yeah. So, okay, so going on to your two singles that are on YouTube, Evil Seed, what was the inspiration behind writing that song?
So, we had a song as our original band milestone called Sharp Teeth, and that was kind of our, like, fast, angry song. Like, we kind of give ourselves, like, one per record, like a fast, angry, like, Architects-y kind of song, and this was just that one. I think originally when we started writing that song, we wanted it to be kind of like a Evil Seed Part 2 type thing. But that one was definitely like that again for lyrics wise. That was also a girl, same girl. But it was more so like Perfect Mirror was the I'm so sad, don't leave me song, and Evil Seed was kind of the like, you know what, I'm better off.
Yeah, I think that one musically was like one of the more organic, like CJ and I bouncing ideas off each other. It's like more like all the riffs are not as much like pieced together how some of our other songs were, or it was like I'm writing whole sections. And there's a couple other songs on the album that are like that too, where it's just like
just came together more naturally.
Yeah,
less producing the music and more just like writing organically.
All right. And we forgot to cover this in the very beginning. Where'd you guys grow up, and where'd you guys kind of like meet?
St. Paul.
St. Paul.
Yeah. CJ and I grew up in like Minneapolis, St. Paul, and then yeah.
Yeah, I'm a West Bloomington guy myself, so right somewhat close to that area.
Yeah. Yep. Definitely. I grew up in Eagan, so I was right by like Bloomington Mall of America.
Oh, yep.
Probably equal distances from St. Paul. So when I first met CJ and Eddie, they lived in, I think, Highland Park. Oh, so yeah. I was like equal distances from both areas.
Yeah. So how did you guys meet? Did you guys meet through someone else, or were you guys buddies like before, or how'd that all work out?
Oh yeah, I met CJ through a girlfriend. I didn't like him at first because I was jealous because he was a better drummer than me. I remember that like specifically still. Like I was a junior in high school, and she was like, "Oh, like my friend CJ wants to come hang out with us." It was me and her and a friend of hers. And I was like, "What? Another boy? Like, hell no!" Like
the truth comes out all these years later.
We went and picked him up at his house, and I remember he came down and he got in the car, and he was just like covered in sweat and smelled horrible, and he was just like, "Sorry, I was drumming," and I was just instantly like, "I love this guy! Like, this guy is so cool." Because at first I thought he was gonna be this just like player kind of guy, like, "What's up, ladies?" and like,
Yeah.
I had no idea. It was like my first relationship, so I just took it as a threat. But then, yeah, instantly thought he was like the coolest guy ever. And then, yeah, we only really hung out like that one time, but I think I added him on Facebook. And then it wasn't until like a year later that I hit him up about like joining the band, because him and Eddie had started writing music and like sharing it on Facebook, and I listened to it and was like, oh man, this would be super fun.
Yeah.
Nice. So it says here also that you guys have merch. How did you come up with the merch to sell, and what types of merch do you guys have?
Ooh, we got lots of stuff right now, actually. So a lot of like the visual aspect that we have for our designs, we I think kind of wanted to keep similar to the aesthetic that the music gives off, kind of like I don't know, like not depressive, but just kind of like somber kind of imagery. So like we kind of found this mixture between like nature and human life, where it's like we've got like leaves and skulls, and it's got the whole like circle of life kind of thing going on. We also have a lot of like Japanese imagery. Both Eddie and CJ are big fans of anime and just Japanese culture in general. So we have a couple different shirts that are definitely very like Japanese culture inspired, like using the flower. And we have a couple like writings in Japanese that say, I think, where I end and you begin on sleeves of our long sleeve and stuff like that. But then otherwise we found just artists that we like. Anyone who does like visual stuff that we think is really cool, we usually just try to buy designs like that we feel like kind of match with our style and the style that we like from them.
Eddie and CJ, what is your favorite anime to watch?
Oh man,
Naruto from CJ.
Yeah, that's good.
I say probably like Trigun or Cowboy Bebop.
I have not heard of those, but I will definitely have to look those two up.
Yeah, definitely.
So also, I should have covered this a little bit earlier too, but All That We See, who came up with that name?
Eddie. I did, actually. The name thing is kind of a weird. We used to be Milestone, but you know, as we were like thinking of like coming out with like this album, because it was like our first sort of like official release. We had another EP as Milestone that was self-produced, but it wasn't the greatest. But then, yeah, we
essentially we had to change our name because there's 5 other bands called Milestone. So like if you Google search us, we were like on page 9. So it was just not really the best search engine optimization for someone trying to get discovered. So our whole goal with changing our name was to find something that was not taken. Like we didn't want there to be any other band. I think there's a song called All That We See by like an 80s artist, but
that's what when I looked up All That We See on YouTube, because I listened to the music right before I do the podcast just so it's fresh in my mind. I looked it up, and then there was like some 80s band popped up, and I was like, oh. But then I saw that the channel that you guys had created. But yeah, I was gonna say, but yeah, do you guys know like why you created that name? Was there any inspiration behind it?
Yeah, so it's do we want to say where it came from?
Maybe not. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe we should probably just leave that for people. I mean, some people who know us kind of get it, but I mean, I don't know. We just want it to be sort of up for other people's
or people can kind of like make up their own minds to like think what they might think that it's about. Yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Totally respect that.
Where we got the name from isn't necessarily what we would define the name as. Like the whole thing that I like about the name All That We See is when we first decided on that name, I kind of thought that there's like a nice like trifecta of like what seeing really means. Like you obviously see with your eyes, and there's like your vision and sight, but then there's also, is that pizza ready? Then there's also like what you allow yourself to see. Like, you know, you could look at a situation and choose to ignore certain things. And that, I think, is a really important element to our name, because I think a lot of our music is about, like, a lot of the self-reflection and personal themes that it has. I think there's a lot that has to do with, like, what people, you know, like, don't kid yourself and don't, you know, like, look at things with more of, like, a objective view than putting your bias on it.
All right.
So that's kind of what I think the name directly could interpret to.
Yeah. So do you guys have any do you guys have a tour planned in the future, or are you guys just like basically working on your music right now?
Right now we are writing some new music. We have a show coming up in I think it's like 3 weeks. July 15th, we're playing the Caboose with Attila, Suicide Silence, Volumes, Spite, and I think there's a couple other bands on there. And then there's a few other bands from the cities as well that are really kick-ass that are playing that show as well.
That is my birthday, so I'm sorry I lost as soon as you said July 15th. So where are you guys playing? Because I would definitely maybe be down to show up for that. What time is it at?
So we play, I think, at about like 9 p.m. or so. The show starts at 2 or so, I want to say. I think doors are at like 2 or 3. And then we play at 9 o'clock. It's at the Caboose, downtown Minneapolis.
The Caboose, okay, definitely. Everyone, make sure to check these guys out. July 15th at the Caboose. Where do you guys see yourselves in the next like year, maybe a couple of years? Like, what's your guys' end goal?
Oh man, I mean, well, we want to release some new music probably by the end of this year. I mean, like a new collection of something, but yeah, just keep releasing music, kind of build, our presence, I guess, more.
Yeah.
We'd like to start playing, more out of town shows. Maybe not necessarily like tours, but like.
Yeah, we've kind of hit the point where like we've done. Yeah, the touring is nice, but I think what we've kind of decided to put more efforts towards is like we'd rather put all our efforts into playing one really big show out of town than like a whole tour where there's one good show.
Yeah. I was gonna say, because your Perfect Mirror song, it got you guys a lot of exposure because that's over 100,000. I think it was like 160 or so, maybe a little bit more, 1,000 views. And obviously the trolls came out and then had to put a thumbs down on it, but we're not even going to talk about that because people just are assholes like that sometimes. But I mean, it did get you guys a lot of exposure, so I would think that, I mean, maybe your next release or the release after that would get you guys significant, also more exposure. So you guys are definitely on the way up as far as I can see.
Yeah, hopefully. The thing with the dislikes on the video is we had help with promotion for that, so it got sent out to quite a few people. However, we decided to take a route of promotion that was not based in metal.
Mm-hmm.
So our music got sent out to a lot of people, but a lot of those people weren't metal fans to begin with.
Oh, yeah.
So that totally, I mean, that we'll take the blame. I'll take the blame all day for that. I thought it would pay off a little more than it did in terms of that. Like the dislikes for sure probably came from just people who aren't even metal fans getting an email with our song attached to it and going, okay, why did I get this? So. Yeah. But yeah, for the new music, we're definitely going to be a little more strategic with putting it out to the right markets and definitely trying to work with more people that we feel can benefit us beyond just like numbers and stuff like that. Like we'd rather have kind of a rapport with fans, and we'd rather have kind of a back and forth and a relationship with the people that like our music and want to support us as a band, rather than just like, here's this big number, we're killing it. I'd rather have 10,000 views of people who would all be willing to come see us live than 100,000 views where 10% of them really actually give a shit,
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I think that'll about wrap it up. I mean, obviously, this is a band that I really, obviously, from what I heard before the podcast, I really, really enjoy. And, I mean, they have such a distinctive sound, too. And, I mean, I love the voice, I gotta say. With Evil Seed, that guitar riff in the middle was unbelievable. I really, really enjoyed that. And the opening for Perfect Mirror, I mean, it kind of reminded me of, like, a Santana-esque kind of thing with the guitar.
I get that vibe. Yeah, I would say, I mean, I can't speak on it. I didn't write that, but I think I've definitely heard kind of like a Spanish. They're Puerto Rican, so I just assume, it's got like a Puerto Rican influence to it a little bit. Yeah. Their dad was he was a talented musician as well, right? And he played a lot of more like.
He played like a lot of drums, percussion.
Yeah, but it wasn't like the style that he played a lot more like that, like South American kind of style music.
Well, yeah, just Latin music.
All right. Yeah, I mean, I definitely got that vibe. I mean, they have some great songs. Where else could people find you? Are you on iTunes or Spotify?
Yep, all of them. We're on all the big ones are on Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Play, iTunes. But yeah, if we could push any of those, Spotify, please. If you're going to listen to us, Spotify is definitely the way to go.
You hear that, everyone? Listen to them on Spotify. All That We See, for sure, on Spotify. And obviously, I will leave a link below. They are playing their next gig on July 15th. I will leave a link below that, too, with the location and their time. It says around 9 p.m. And then I'll also leave a link for their YouTube channel. Guys, man, it was great having you on the podcast. It was really a joy to talk to you guys. I think the audience especially learned a lot, and I think one of the biggest lessons that they obviously learned was about touring, how to just not get your hopes up so much on your first few tours, just kind of learn to just go with the flow and just not expect so much. But guys, it was really a great pleasure having you guys on the podcast, and maybe we'll get you guys back on sometime soon to talk about if you guys have a new album coming up or if you guys are planning on tour. For sure, let us know. But we'll keep the audience updated on what you guys are up to date to. Does that sound good?
Sounds perfect, man.
Sounds
Thank you so
man.
much.
All right, yeah, man. You guys take it easy, okay?
Have a good one, man.
All right, you too.